Okay, today's lesson's the distributive property. Remember, we learned about a lot of the properties yesterday of algebra, and this is a very important one, so it gets a whole entire day and lesson devoted just to it. So the distributive property is a mental math strategy that can be used when multiplying. If we are going to take numbers like 43 times 5 and we want to multiply them pretty quickly in our head, the first thing we can do is decompose or break apart that 43 into 40 plus 3. Then we could take each part and times it by 5. That would allow us to come to the solution pretty quickly, because then we could just add it together in the end with the 200 plus 15 to get 215. So being able to decompose these numbers and breaking them into more friendly numbers, then you can multiply things pretty quickly in your head. So we're going to see how this works. Let's take a look at another example. Let's break the 53 apart. Go ahead and multiply, and then add back together. So there's going to be 3 steps to doing the distributive property. 1, when you're using it as a mental math strategy, break apart the double-digit number. 2, multiply each part by 4. You're going to be distributing the 4. And I love to show my work using arrows, so I would recommend that you do too, so that you don't forget to multiply. And then sum, or add the 2 products together if the distributive property works too, and you'll see later in other ways. So we can go ahead and add the numbers together and get 112. So the word distribute means to give out. We talked a lot about the root words of these properties to help us to understand their meaning. So we're going to distribute the cubes to the girls. So let's see an example. In this example, the 5 was distributed. 5 times 38 is the same as 5 times 30 plus 8, so we distribute the 5 to the 30 and the 5 to the 8. And you can get the solution of 190. Try this one. The 7 is distributed to get 322. Now for our homework tonight, typically I'm really not going to have you find the solution. Really what I'm curious and what I'm interested in is for you to be able to go from this form to this form, okay, where you show it as the multiplication. And then in reverse, if you see it like this, to go back to and write it like this. And that reversal is kind of like factoring out that common factor of 7 and putting it outside of the parentheses. So we'll get some practice a little bit later in this PowerPoint. Let's practice. Which of the following expressions shows the distributive property for 5 times the quantity 3 plus 7? Remember, we're distributing the 5, so we have to take 5 times 3 plus 5 times 7, and you got it. How about 3 times the quantity 9 plus 4? 3 times 9 plus 3 times 4. Good job. You're on a roll. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to this? Now, if you can see this, we have 2 plus 3 2 times. Very good. Which of the following expressions is equivalent? So here's an example of one of those that I'll give you the distributed expression, and I want you to write it, and we don't have to use the times sign for the multiplication, that gets confusing. Correct. 4 times the quantity 3 plus 8. The reason we don't want to use the time sign is because a little bit later we're going to bring in some variables. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to 5 times 9 plus 5 times 3? That repeated factor is 5, and it's the one that goes outside the parentheses. Now we bring in a variable. Note that we are distributing the 3. We have to distribute the 3 to the first term, which is x, and distribute it to the second term, which is 7, and an addition sign goes between them. So 3 times x plus 3 times 7, and you can actually evaluate that to get 3x plus 21. Try this one and write an equivalent expression. 4 times x plus 4 times 5, 4x plus 20. Which expression is equivalent to 8 times the quantity x plus 2? Again, we're distributing 8. 8 times x and 8 times 2. These are pretty easy, I think. How about this one? 2 times the quantity x plus 3. You got it right. Let's use the distributive property to rewrite the following. So in this case, I don't want you to get the product, right? I just want an equivalent expression. So for the first one, you would write it and show your arrows and then show your multiplication with a plus sign between. Okay, and you can leave it in that form. For this one, the second one, 7 times x minus 7 times 9, we see that the repeated factor is 7. So that's the one that gets factored out and put on the outside of the parentheses. Inside the parentheses is the x minus 9, because you would take 7 times x and 7 times 9. And note that we're subtracting, and we're going to talk about as time goes on, whether or not we look at that as a plus a negative 9, which will be easier when we're combining like terms. So we'll deal with that in future lessons. That concludes this presentation.